The Central Bank of Nigeria's 60 billion naira OMO auction was 6 times oversubscribed. Traders at Access Bank say they expect a rather quiet end to the week ahead of the retail SMIS auction and bond auction settlement. Kinskin Ukeje, an FX trader at Access Bank, joins me now for a weekend wrap of the fixed income and Forex markets. Kinskin, thank you so much for your time. Starting with that 60 billion OMO auction that was oversubscribed, clearly that means there's still quite a bit of liquidity out there, I imagine. The big question is what happens next? There has been talk about the central bank potentially issuing some special bills to mob up liquidity. What are you hearing?
Okay, thank you for having me. The central bank issued an OMO auction where they offered 60 billion and sold 60 billion. However, the total bids were 6 times oversubscribed by 645 billion, and we saw the central bank maintain rates across. So what we expect is that the unmet demand of that auction filter into the secondary market, and we'll see a bullish run on that end, because we in the market we have a fairly excess liquidity, and market participants are looking at investing their idle funds.
But don't you think the central bank would proceed to seek new ways to mop up that liquidity, maybe using the, should I say, the cash reserve ratio mechanism, or potentially those special bills that I mentioned?
Yeah, the central bank could come in to mop up funds, but we are expecting part of those funds to be exited today due to settlement of the bond auction, which takes about 298 billion out of that liquidity, and then the retail SMS auction to be held today would also take part of that liquidity. However, going into next week, if the liquidity persists, we will see a bullish run in the fixed income space where market participants will keep trying to purchase funds in order to invest the idle funds. That's if the CBN doesn't come in to mop up funds via CRR or issue special bills.
All right. But again, I was discussing this issue with an equity analyst earlier, and the expectation that rates are likely to rise this year doesn't seem to have played out so far. And what do you make of that? And are you one of those that expect that those rates would at some point rise? And in fact, some are suggesting that the NPR might be raised several times this year as well.
Yeah, I form part of that perspective that rate will sometime in the rise. When that happens, I can't foresee it, but we'll look at the second quarter, and we do think that the rates should increase. We should look at, we have pre-election year coming, and we just want to give the FPI's kind of result and maybe increase the rates to make them invest and keep the funds in the country.
But do you think that will be driven by the need to borrow more by the federal government, or is it like to put that sweetener, if you like, on the yields to attract those foreign investors that you just mentioned?
Yes, there will be need to borrow more funds, even as the CBN has sent. The president has sent in a request for 2 trillion extra budgetary, and we expect that shows that the Nigerian government has more appetite to borrow funds, and we believe that part of those funds to be borrowed will filter into the local markets. So rates should have to go.
All right, let's talk a bit about the Forex market and the outlook for that. There has been relative stability in the official market recently, but the big question is what happens next? Do you expect that stability to persist, or are you seeing any risk factors that we should be mindful of?
Yeah, for the investors and exporters window, we've seen the CBN continuously trying to impact and intervene in those markets and try to keep rates as stable as possible. In view, I do think the rates would remain at stable till another decision from it's more about the regulatory body language, and when they do think the rate should depreciate, maybe they want to pursue market for the non-exporters. We might see rates go up in that market.
All right, and what's your view on that target of raising about $200 billion from non-oil exports over the next couple of years? And what do you make of that? And from the activity that you've observed around non-oil exporters, what are the prospects of that?
Yeah, the prospect is good. I do think it's a step in the right direction. And if you look at the GDP report, we see that the non-oil exports contribute a large percentage of that. And the CBN coming in to ease off that market and therefore increase exports and increase across the value chain to increase the value of exports we get from the non-oil commodities. I do think it's a step in the right direction, and if possibly and if perfectly executed, we should see those returns come into the country.